Hello, hello. Welcome. This is Vivian Davis. Welcome to one of my Vivian's virtual video art tutorials. It's a mouthful. And thanks for coming. We're going to be having a little fun today with a lot of color. And our focus is a step-by-step painting for which we are going to work with photos of jellyfish. So if you've been on the event page and you saw some of the information I provided, I did post 3 photos of jellyfish that I just kind of got off of Google. And also I put a photo of a kind of a quickie step-by-step painting that I've used for kids classes. So we're not going to be actually creating that one today, although if you are young and you still want to follow along, it will be just fine because I'm still going to walk you through how to do this step-by-step. But you must go to the discussion page of the event. On that page, I posted the 3 photos and I posted a image of the painting. So we'll use a little bit of that kind of layout, but we're going to focus on one jellyfish, and it's also similarly very colorful. So if you look at the 3 that I had posted, you can sort of see it in the distance here on my Surface Pro. I have this one in the middle, and that's the one I'm talking about. There is another one that is got a blue background, and it's kind of an orange, burnt orange and white jellyfish. And then the other one is also got some reds and some dark blues. And these, I don't know how these images are taken. I'm not sure if they're doctored at all, if they're taken in a specific light. But the one I liked the best, and again was similar to the painting I had created, was this one in the middle. And so we're going to use that one. We're going to build layers. So we're going to start with a little bit of a sketch and then a background color, and then we'll work on the foreground of this jellyfish. Now, just be aware that when you paint from a photo that you've just done a Google search, it's not a painting that should be sold unless you've gotten permission from the individual who took this photo. Bear with me a moment. I'm going to ask Alexa to lower the music. Alexa, volume down. I have some light jazz playing in the background, and I never know exactly what volume to do because depending on the song that gets started, it's either too loud or too quiet. So anyway, I'm working in my kitchen and there are windows open. It's a really nice day. So if you hear a little bit of background noise, I apologize. We have neighbors that are out there having some fun on occasion and making a little noise. I also have my family here with me because we're doing our best to stay at home. It is April 29th and we're in that interesting time of our lives where we're having to adhere to COVID-19 restrictions. So I'm staying home and not going into my studio. I have a small space over at the Art Center, and going forward, I'll likely do some of these tutorials at that location. So back to the painting. We're going to use this photograph, but we're doing this as a demonstration. This is for fun today. And if you wish to change it in any way, add other jellyfish, maybe do something a little different to it, then certainly you should be okay to offer that for sale. But otherwise, since we're following this, just wanted to make that disclaimer. Okay. Next, we're going to go over some of the materials. I did post those on the description for the event today, and so hopefully you'll look through it. I have links to materials you can purchase through Dick Blick online, and if you do use the link, I will get some credit, and so I appreciate that because I am doing these for free, and so it just gives me a little pocket change when you make a purchase. So there's that. And then lastly, the paints and the materials we're using, let me go through that, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So you're definitely going to want a cup of water, and some, paper towel. And you're going to want maybe a variety of brushes. I'll show you what I have with me today. I switch them up sometimes, but recently I've been using a lot of the same ones. So I have a couple of flat, actually I don't have a big flat brush. I'm not sure what I did with my flat brush, but I have a small flat brush, an angled brush, so I have to grab a big flat one because we'll use that for the background. I have a big round brush. I have 3 small round brushes. This actually more of a medium. This one here is small. And then I always have a liner because I really like that for those really distinctive lean lines, and we'll need those for the jellyfish. So any combination of these brushes is fine. I'm sure you'll do your best. I have a specific type of brush or brand of brush that I usually buy. I'm not endorsing them because I'm getting paid for that, but because I actually like these brushes. They're Princeton Art and Brush Company. They're synthetic brushes. I've been using them for a while, and I also use them for my students when I teach class because I like them to have good brushes to use. Okay, so along with that, you may want to use a pencil. I'm going to go ahead and sketch with a drawing pencil, just a quick outline. That's all I'm going to do. I typically don't necessarily sketch on my board. Sometimes I will transfer a design. Sometimes I will just use paint, but today, just so that you can kind of see an outline, I'm going to go ahead and do a quickie sketch. And then as far as colors are concerned, I had mentioned in the description that fluorescent colors would be great. So if you have any of those, Acrylic through Dick Blick makes these fluorescents in a variety of colors. I just happen to have a bunch of them. I have fluorescent violet. I have a fluorescent, it says true red, but it's really kind of like a bright orange. And this one is my favorite, and I've used most of it. I don't have a whole lot of this left. This is chromacryl, and this is just a really bright fluorescent orange. You can kind of see that on the cap. Very, very bright. And so I may throw that in there, even though I don't have a lot of orange specifically in this photograph. And this is another one of my favorites, this fluorescent yellow orange. And I've used that a lot in painting. So you can see it's a big container and there's just a little bit at the bottom. We won't need this one today, but they also have this nice fluorescent green. So if you like fluorescent colors, I highly recommend these. They are student acrylics. They're a little more watery, so sometimes you have to build up layers, but they turn out beautiful when you do. Let's see, so other colors. I've got some white, I've got some black. I'm going to be using this cobalt teal, which is from Liquitex, and that's a really pretty color because I want to throw some of that into the top of the jellyfish along with a little bit of blue. And so that is my green. I have some phthalo green. I don't think I'll be using that today. I was debating, but that one is nice because you can use it as a dark green, or you can add a little white to it and it becomes also kind of a turquoise or a aqua green. Let's see, I also have some of these Utrecht, which is actually Dick Blick now because they've merged, but they had their own store and brand before. I have a red violet because I want to definitely put some pink and magentas and purples in here. I've got a yellow because there's definitely some yellow in this painting, maybe a deep yellow. Let's see, I've got a phthalo blue, which is a little bit of a darker blue. You can also use an ultramarine blue, but in this photograph, that darker section in the bottom is more towards this kind of, I don't want to say warmer, but kind of more of a matte dark blue. And then just for fun, I have this, I'm not sure what color is this. This is an iridescent blue-black, but it almost looks like a blue-gray, but it's really pretty. So if I can throw that in there somewhere, well, I love the iridescent. If you have any iridescent paint or an iridescent medium that you want to add to your painting, that's always kind of fun in this case as well. And I have a glazing medium that I may show you or demonstrate how to mix with your paint to create a little bit of transparency on some of these tendrils of the jellyfish. So if you don't have this, don't worry. I don't know if I included it as part of the materials, but if you're just watching this and then you're going to do this program later, then you have the opportunity to pick that up or something like that. Otherwise, we'll just use water and kind of thin out those paints. We're working for a couple of hours, usually the first part of the tutorial. We're talking about materials. We get started usually within the 20 or 30-minute mark. But even in an hour and a half, sometimes your acrylic paint can dry out. So I always usually say, you know, have a spray bottle. Give it a little spritz on some of those paints. Actually, that didn't work very well now, did it? See if I can do it without hitting my actual phone. So a little spritz on your paints while they're sitting on your palette. Or you also have a acrylic extender. It feels like a little bit oily, but if you mix it in with your acrylic paint, it'll keep your paint from drying out as fast. So if you're working on a really large painting, you're working for more than a couple of hours, this is always a good idea to do. So I just kind of try to show different products that I use as time goes so you guys can learn a little bit about that. And then let's see, do I have anything else I want to show you? I think that's most of the colors. I also have a magenta, which I'm going to be using for sure. So any kind of magenta will help. So your colors might not be exactly like mine. Don't worry about that. We're just going to practice today, and we are going to try to finish most of this painting in about an hour and a half, but we won't necessarily finish all the details. You might want to go back and clean up your lines. You may want to touch up your background. So feel free to re-watch this if you get behind. If you're not sure about something I was doing, and obviously feel free to continue to paint once this program is over. We're going to go from 2 to 4, and so once 4 o'clock hits, I'll wrap it up, and then you obviously have the time to continue to paint. And if you do, I suggest you take a break. It will clear your mind. It will let you look at your painting in a whole new light if you come back to it, and then finish from there. And then obviously I want to see pictures. So if you finish today and you want to post pictures or send them to me, you can either email me at tutoringart@gmail.com. You can post it on the event page on Tutoring Art, my Facebook page. You can send it through my website, which is tutoringart.com, and you can even post it on Instagram and tag me. And my page on Instagram is also Tutoring Art. So I'm really easy to find. If you Google search Vivian Davis Artist, you'll find just about everywhere you can find me, maybe even places I didn't even know I could be found. So I typically pop up. Okay, so here we go. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm just going to show you how to do a very light sketch. I wouldn't suggest using a 2B pencil. I am using a 2B pencil so you can see what I'm doing, but I would recommend maybe a 2H or a 6H pencil, something light, just light enough that you can see it. And when you do that, that way, if you want to erase some of your lines, if it gets too dark, or you want to cover those lines, then you won't be as visible once you put the paint on, okay? So the first thing I want to do is kind of do the top part of the jellyfish, and I'm going to let some of the tendrils fall off the canvas. I'm using an 11 by 14. I suggested any type of rectangular canvas. So if you have a longer canvas that's a little taller than mine, then you could do the whole jellyfish and fill the canvas. But since mine's a little shorter, I'm going to let them just kind of run off at the bottom. And I'm going to bring my jellyfish a little higher than maybe the photograph shows. So I'm going to come up to about here. And the top of that jellyfish kind of looks like a mushroom head. So if you think that shape, I'm just going to start up here, maybe about an inch from the top, and I'm just going to be really sketchy because I'm going to kind of blend it so that it doesn't look like a really sharp line later. And I'm working away from my canvas as I film this through, or videotape this through my phone. So I am actually holding my arm. I would usually suggest, when I draw, a lot of times I kind of draw real close, you know, like you would if you're drawing with a pencil. But in my case, I want to be able to show you what I'm doing, so I'm going to just kind of hold my arm. All right, so I'm going to come up here, and I'm just going to start at the top and look at the shape. And you want to make sure you're really looking at the photograph, okay? Don't just go by what I'm saying. I'm not going to be duplicating this exactly myself. But look at the photograph, look at the shape, and like I said, kind of looks like a mushroom head. So we're going to bring this around. I'm going to go pretty wide and then bring it down. Come up here and then bring it down here. And it doesn't have to look exactly like, each side doesn't have to look identical. In this photograph, if you have it pulled up, again, it kind of goes a little flat on the right. I may make it more rounded on both sides because I'm gonna loosely base this on this photograph, okay? But I'm gonna bring it down a little bit more. Yeah, a little bit more than that, okay? And so you can use a pink eraser. You can use one of those like nice big white square erasers if you want. But the recommendation I have is that you definitely draw light so that if you do have to erase, you don't have to worry about a bunch of extra lines, okay? All right, and then the top part of this jellyfish has a little bit of a shape. So even though I'm going to be painting this in, I'm going to go ahead and there's this little section up here that kind of curves up. It's almost like a graph. It curves up and then it goes down and then it goes back up and then it comes down. And then there are some highlights in there, but for the most part, you'll see that it just kind of comes down, goes out a little, and then comes down again. So, like I said, just a rough sketch, and we'll put some paint over it. And then on this side, kind of curves in a little, and then comes down, okay? Everything else is pretty much covered because this jellyfish is kind of leaning back from our view, okay? So that's the shape. I'm gonna bring it a little closer to the camera so you can kind of see that. Lighting's kind of iffy today, but hopefully you can see some of those lines, okay? All right, so next, I don't want to do all these tendrils. That makes no sense to sketch them each out, okay? We'll paint them in. But I do want to create boundaries. So that means, you know, how far out am I going to come? And how far up am I going to go? So there's like a clear like film up in here. And so these tendrils are actually going to start up a little higher than you can see them. You can kind of see up in here, up in here. So I want you to pay that attention to that, because we are going to put a little bit of a white film on top of them once we do those tendrils. But for now, just want you to be aware of that. And I'm only going to do a couple in here to remind you. If you want to do one in the middle to remind yourself that you're going up that high, that's fine. And then on the side, you're going to see there's some tendrils that kind of curl in and then kind of come down. And then there's one that just comes out a little bit more and then comes back into the mix. And then some of them stop short. And let's see, and then there's a few lines in here, but then this one is going to have maybe one that's like ends here. Okay, so that's my left side. So if you can kind of see that. So here, there's one that comes out, and then there's one that comes down here and just curves. Oops, gave myself an extra line. Okay, all right. On the other side, you'll kind of see there's like, I don't know, some little translucent little pieces here that I'm just going to create a little, like just the shape of it, and then we'll come back and we'll fill that in. And then I'm going to do a couple of the short tendrils that are here. And I forget what you call these things. I looked at it the other day and I've just completely drawn a blank. Okay. But those kind of curl in, and then the longer ones, the ones that are coming from here, that come all the way from the top, go right in front of that, and then down kind of wave and then kind of goes off the page. So right now, if you look at my illustration, it almost looks like I'm going to paint a mushroom from the view of the grass. Strange as that is, because you can see I have an end piece here, and then I have a piece here, and then you've got like what looks like a mushroom head, so it's kind of funny. But if it looks something like that, then you're doing all right, okay? Not going to worry about all the ones in the center because we're going to end up painting some color, and so we're going to cover some of that up. But I just did want you to kind of, in your mind, know, where are my, where's my illustration going to end? It looks like maybe I could just add a couple more lines here. Yeah, so where's it going to end? And then beyond that's just going to be background, okay? We're going to start with the background, and you have a choice of colors to use. The other photos, like this one had kind of a mix of blue, and this one a very bright blue. And there was another photo I had pulled up, but then I just decided I didn't like it as much. That had a black background. So you have a choice. If you're using fluorescent colors, the black background might be really cool. So you have that choice. But I'm going to work with a blue. Remember I mentioned before I was going to use the phthalo blue, which was darker for the base. And then I might just do a gradation just from the bottom to the top, kind of like shown in the photograph. But I'm going to use, let's see, I'm going to use the cerulean blue. And maybe we'll add a little bit of teal in there, but we'll start out with this one. And this is one of my Liquitex paints. So kind of a medium blue and a dark blue. But if you only have, for example, a dark blue, then just put a little bit of white on your palette. Now I'm using a foam plate, which I tend to do when I teach classes because they're easy to throw away. I know that they're not great for the environment. I say that every time, and I still keep using them. But if you're using a palette, great. But go ahead and put some, either a couple of blues on there or the primary blue that you're going to use and a little bit of white. I'm going to put the two blues, and I'm going to put white as well on mine. Okay, and I found my white. So I'm using, it's kind of a thicker body white, but any kind of white paint will be fine. So I'll have the three blues, or three colors on my plate. Okay, if you're gonna add a little teal, you can put a little teal on there too. I'm not gonna start with that, all right? You're gonna need a big flat brush to work with, so I'm grabbing my big flat brush. You'll hear me walking away briefly, and now I'm back. All right, so this is my big flat brush, and this is what I meant to have, so I just had to go behind myself and grab it. Okay, so I'm gonna take a little bit of my dark blue. I'm gonna add a little bit of, this is a really nice bright blue. I'm gonna add a little bit of water to my brush, and I'm just gonna take some of this color and mix it around. And I'm gonna have you go inside the jellyfish, but I want you to leave yourself a little bit of a gap. So for example, if I'm coming in, I'm going to go ahead and leave a little bit of a line for where I put that tendril on the right, because I don't want to lose that. That was my border, right? Same thing here. Go around that, and then maybe just kind of fill in inside there. Okay, only because those are my end pieces. In the middle, you don't want to go up any more than about halfway, because we've got this section in here. We're going to be adding some yellow and some white. So maybe in here, it kind of looks like clouds. So I'm going to outline about halfway up, maybe a little more than halfway up. I'm just going to kind of just give it kind of a little fuzzy edge, go up, and then I'll fill that in. And don't worry about leaving your lines in here. We're gonna come back with those. Okay, so I'm just gonna come in here, maybe leave this line so you can kind of see it. And then here, Again, I'm leaving a little thin line. Hardly visible, just so it's there, so you can make these a lot thinner than I'm showing you. And then I'm going to mix all this color, and I'm only going to mix about 1/3 of the way up. I'm going to just brush it out about 1/3 of the way up because we're going to mix it with that other blue as we go up. 1/3, or maybe that's 1/3, a little more than 1/3. And I'm leaving that nice little thin tendril there. And I'm bringing it out. Now, if you're using student grade acrylics, mine are a little bit more opaque, and yours might be a little more thin. So don't worry if you're leaving lines. You'll be able to come back and touch that up. So for right now, you can go with a nice light coat all the way through. I went up a little high with the blue in the middle because I was showing you that stopping point, but we'll mix the color together with it. I'm just going to go ahead and do it now that I've started. Yeah, I'll bring this up a little more. Either way, we're going to mix. Okay, so I want you guys to have some fun. Don't put any pressure on yourself. This should be a fairly easy painting. The hardest part was just what we did, which was kind of sketch out the shape. Other than that, we should make this a nice relaxing time together. Strange times. I am the president of the Chesapeake Bay Art Association, which is a local organization here in Norfolk, Virginia, that encompasses artists from all around the area. And every fall, there is a big festival at the Ocean View Beach Park. And we've been talking about whether or not that's going to happen in October, and maybe some other options to do in its place. And so I've been using Zoom, which was the first time ever, to hold board meetings. And I've done a couple other meetings that way now. It's kind of a fun application. I also learned that I could do these demonstrations via Zoom, but right now I kind of like doing them on Facebook Live. I have friends that will paint with me when I do these on Facebook. And so for the time being, I'm going to leave it be, and then that might change. I also found another platform called Patreon where you can load video art tutorials. And I think you can set up for folks to pay a small fee, which is my ideal scenario. I don't want to charge a bunch for these things. Right now, you know, like I said, they are free. So I'm trying to decide the best way to go. But would love to have you continue to paint with me or draw with me or anything you want to do going forward. If you watch YouTube, I do have a YouTube channel, and after these are finished, I leave them on, or I save them onto my Facebook page, and then I load them to YouTube. So I just recently loaded a few more. I didn't put all the materials list on there yet, so I got to come back and touch that up. But if you are on YouTube and you come back and watch this later and you want to subscribe to my channel, you'll see them as they pop up as well. Okay, so I only went, like I said, about a third, little more than a third up, and at the top, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the lightest color I'm going to use, which is going to be a mix of the white and a little bit of that cerulean blue that I was going to use, or I'm going to use. So you're going to want to rinse your brush really, really well. because we want that base bottom to dry. We'll come back and touch it up later, don't worry. When you clean that brush, you should have nice blue water. Nice blue water. And then you want to dry your brush. Make sure you keep that acrylic paint off those brushes. If you set this brush off to the side and you have paint on it, it will long-term ruin those brushes. It will dry and it will make, what usually happens is you can't really open the fibers anymore of the brush. Sometimes it'll get real stiff and then it's just not any good anymore. There are reconditioning chemicals out there you can use, and I have been known to use it to refurbish brushes that I use for classes. But ideally, if you just clean these really well, they'll last you a long time without having to do that. Okay? All right, so I'm gonna take a little bit of white and I'm gonna move it over. And then I'm gonna take a little bit of my cerulean blue, which is right here, and I'm gonna mix it together. Okay? I might even add a tiny bit of this darker blue below because it is a different tone of blue, kind of a different shade of blue. Not sure how you'd refer it, but I just want to lighten this up, but I also want to give it the brightness of that blue below. Okay? And then I'm going to take that color and I'm going to go up top and I'm going to spread it out. And if you want to paint the sides of your canvas, feel free. I don't always, especially when I'm demonstrating. A lot of times I'm holding the canvas in my hand, so I've gotten out of the habit of it. And I haven't decided what I'm going to do with this as a sample. It might be one I use for future events, I'm not sure. Okay. If you get too dark, feel free to take some white paint and mix it up into the paint that you've already applied on the canvas. So you don't have to just blend on the plate, you can blend on the canvas as well. Okay, and I'm gonna bring that, and I'm gonna leave a little bit of a gap in between. And I'm gonna go all the way around. All the way around. And then again, I'm going to stop about in here. I feel like I got a little dark, so I'm going to grab a little bit of white. Just come up to the top. Bring that across. A little bit of white here. And then bring it back down a little. It'll just create a lightness up at the top, even lighter than the color I'm using, which I'll drag down. Okay. All right, so you're going to come around this side and down. And we're going to do what we did below, but we're going to do it a little differently. Get this painted in well. Okay. So I want to put some of that blue on the top of that jellyfish. And I almost want to do a lighter blue, a watery blue in here, even though it's going to end up having more white. What I'd like you to do is wet your brush as much as you can. Clean that brush off, wet your brush, and just pick up a tiny bit of that color that you just used. Okay, so just a really, really small amount. And then I'm going to come in here, and if you want to use your round brush to do this, you can. I'm using the end of my brush and just kind of following the curve. This should be very watery, you'll see in a moment. Very watery. I left a tendril here, so I'm going to go around the tendril. This is the reason I was using this brush particularly. And same here. There's a tendril in there. And I'm gonna wet my brush a little and come back and keep painting, but be careful, because see how it's starting to drip? You're gonna wanna dry your brush off some. That's why I'm starting up here, is you don't wanna drip it to the bottom. But it's nice and thin. Ooh, just lost my little tendril there. It's all right. Nice and watery. And you can follow it all the way to the bottom. All the way to the middle there. Because we're gonna have other color on top of that. Okay? Clean your brush, and if you look like it's too much paint, wet your brush, come back and pick some up and drag it down. You can even go right over that blue below. Now I'm putting a little bit of light blue in here as well, but we're gonna end up using the other blue that we're getting ready to paint here in just a moment. I just don't wanna lose my lines. So you can see where I just left some of the white space of the areas that I knew I was gonna come back, and I think I wanted to do that. Maybe not. Maybe not. We probably didn't need it there. Okay. Either way, we'll come back with some color. So maybe I'll put some here to be consistent. And then in here, if you guys can see that, where I had those little tiny tendrils, and I'm just gonna fill that in a little. All right. Like an eraser mark here, not mark, shade, you know, the eraser pieces that come off. Okay, now this section here, and including in here, we're going to, I mean, we won't let me take that back. We won't have to do this section, because this section is going to be covered in a white kind of yellow cloud anyway. But we are going to create that gradation between here and here on the sides here. So now if you were using two colors, then you're going to want to take a little bit of each and mix a color in between. So something in between. You may even need to add a little bit of white to it, but I'm adding a lot of my blue from below. So you'll see I had the dark, I had the medium, and now I'm kind of mixing the two together. And I'm going to put that color in the middle here. And right now I have a striped background. But we're going to fix that. So the main thing I want to do right the moment is get the color in there. And then if you want to use a smaller brush, I want you to take this same color and I want you to run it in between those tendrils. So I'm going to take this color, mix it up a little bit higher, the one I just used, and bring it down. Right, now bring it up. Bring that up. Bring it down a tiny bit maybe. We're going to blend this here momentarily, okay? All right, and then we're going to use that smaller brush. So I'm using my kind of medium or small, smaller, but I call it my medium round. And I'm going to take that same color I'm using, and I'm going to come in here. Again, kind of holding my arm. And as I do this, I'm thinning out these lines because they really are very thin. I think I forgot that this came out and around. So if you did that and you also ignored the fact that there was a round line there, you know, I'll make mistakes. I'm going to use a little white paint, and I'm just going to remind myself that this is this. Okay? And then I'm going to go right back to painting in between. So I think I'm going to bring this color down here and also here. I'm dripping a little bit. We're going to touch up the top and bottom and blend, don't you worry. And then in here, because I had that dark color. This color is going to probably be the least translucent because it's a mix of two colors. So that kind of helps. So I'll come here and do the same thing. Now the rest of this is going to have that white cloud, so don't go in here. And then on the side here, same thing. In here, you're gonna have a little bit of a white cloud. So no going in here. All right, up in here, you can, those little shapes, you can kind of go around with your color, leaving those little kind of triangular shapes that stick out. And it looks like I had a tendril here that should still be attached, so I'm just gonna put a little white paint to remind me that that's what that is. Okay. Now the reason I did this is because I was using two different colors, and I was trying to really decide which one I liked better. So now we're gonna have to blend. So I'm gonna use my big round brush, and I'm going to take the color that I used up top, which is lighter, this color here, right? And I'm gonna wet my brush, grab some of that paint, kind of touch this up a little. I think I went a little too light. Somehow I got a little lighter, so I'll just spread it out really fast, which is fine. And then I'm going to take that medium color I mixed, and I'm going to put some more in there. And now I'm going to blend the two together and just kind of let it fade. Now I'm just gently touching my canvas. I'm going to wet my brush and come down a little lower. And the key is you don't want to have a line, okay? So when you get to the point where you've kind of mixed those two colors together, rinse your brush, dry your brush, and just bring that color down a little. Maybe bring it into the dark blue a little. And we're gonna fudge that in we're gonna mix that, smudge it. So you can see now how that color transforms to this color, okay? Even if it's a little blotchy, you can always practice or try it again. I have just a tiny bit of a blotchy area there. I'm gonna, again, do the same thing on this side. I'm gonna put this color in, which was unfortunately, I guess I had too much white that I didn't mix in yet. I'm just gonna mix that in a little here, bring it down, And I'm going to take that medium color I was using and bring it up. There we go. It's more like it. Started to finish up that color. I had to mix it up again. And then you can even bring it down to the bottom if you want. And mix them in here, especially if it's different. And then for the last part, we're gonna do the same thing with the darker color. I'm gonna take my darker color from the bottom, and this should still be wet, so I'm gonna wet this area a little. Over here, and in the middle here. And then I'm gonna dry my brush, because you still should have some wet paint in those three areas. And I'm gonna mix them. Dry your brush really, really well, otherwise it doesn't work very well. And I'm just lightly touching the canvas and blending it all together. Lightly touch your canvas, bring it all together. And then obviously, I need a little bit more of that dark down here, because even though, like I said, I was using a thicker paint, it still left me a little blotchy, so now I'm just gonna touch up the rest of this. Running out of that dark paint, add a little bit more. So the bottom is really dark, the top is really light, and somewhere in the middle, you have that transition of color. I see some familiar names watching here and there. If you cover a little bit of your tendril, don't worry. So we're coming back and working on that. So I'm just making this a little darker, making it a little darker on this side, nice and even, and same thing on this side. Okay, I'm working fast, just blending it all over the place. And if it looks like you don't have a good transition, you know, you can work this area a little bit more. But once it starts to dry, I would just come back and touch it up later, because otherwise you'll be pulling paint right off the canvas. You don't want to do that. Once acrylics start to dry and you go back and you try to paint, they become very messy. And sometimes they get kind of mushy and the paint comes back up, and you don't want that to happen. So now I have a nice transition from the lighter color to the darker color for the background. And that's all I'm going to do for the background right now. You can come back and touch it up. We are going to come in, believe it or not, and put some teal up in there later, or a turquoise or an aqua green, whatever you have. But we're going to do it once we start working up in here, okay? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to create the rest of these tendrils. Now, we're not going to do them in all the colors that you see. What I'd like to do is make these colors brighter. So in order to make these colors a little brighter, I want them to have a start of the white paint up in here. And then we're just gonna kind of let it fade and just be a very faint, light color. That way, when you put in your pink, when you put in an orange or a purple, it's gonna go from that lighted area up in here, and then it's just gonna get a little darker as it goes into the darker area. So I'll demonstrate, don't worry, we're gonna do this together, but I just kind of wanted to describe what we're gonna do. So I am rinsing my brushes really, really well. You're gonna have kind of blue water. You're welcome to rinse it. Anytime you wanna take a little break, feel free to do that. but I, think you can work with this water just fine the way it is. And it's not going to taint any of your colors. So I'm going to take a quick sip of water. If you want to change out your water, feel free. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to work with my liner. If you have a small brush with a small brush head, feel free to use that. But I'm using the one, see if I focus better here. You can see in front of my painting better. I'm working with the one on the right with the long brush head, because that brush is going to give me a very thin line that I need. This one will do it, but it might take you a little longer to finish the lines. Like you might have to come back and do a second part. So I'm going to show you, but I'm going to go ahead and use this one. You use whatever small brush you have. It's just fine. I love these liners. If you don't have one, I suggest you get one. They're terrific small brushes. Okay. Now I'm cleaning up my area a little bit here because I have a lot of blue paint on my paper towel, and then I'll get started. All right, here we go. Move my brushes out of the way. All right, so I'm going to wet my brush. Make sure you have some white paint on your plate. I'm using a Blick acrylic white for this part because it's a more watery paint, which means it's easier to work with when you're doing like a long thin line, and we're going to water it down even a little bit more beyond that. So these are good for that. If you have a thick white paint, make sure you take a bigger brush, add a little bit of water to it, and make it nice and loose. Okay? So I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to wet it, and then I'm going to put some white paint on the end, but we want it to be nice and thin. Okay? So you don't want to put a clump on your brush. You can kind of see that there. And I'm going to start at the top. Now, look at your photo, but keep in mind, your lines don't have to be exactly like mine, and they don't have to be exactly like the photo. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm enlarging my photo on the screen so I can see them a little better. It reminds me of spaghetti. Think of spaghetti. They're going to intertwine a little in the middle, so you don't want all of them to be straight. Actually, they're not straight. You don't want them to all come down in one single file line. You want them to move around. So I'm going to start up here, because remember, we're starting up high, and then we're going to give it that little film at the end. And then I'm going to come down, and I'm going to kind of let it fade a little. Okay? So you see how awesome this liner is. It allows me to just drag it all the way down. So I'm going to go up at the top again. I'm going to grab a line, and actually didn't put enough paint on my brush that time. And maybe I'll have this one, oops, stopped. I shouldn't have stopped. Kind of crossover. Okay. Some of them are going to be very close together, so just take your time. You can kind of look at your photograph. My brush has a problem for some reason. All right, it keeps spreading out at the bottom. I may have, I may have used it, unfortunately, I may have used it to mix, and sometimes that'll happen. So I'm looking for another one of these real quick, which I have somewhere. If not, I can continue to use this one. Should have a backup. Keep doing your lines. I'll be right there. Yep, here's my backup. This one came in a set of green brushes. I also have this liner, which is not as long, but we'll do the same thing. And this comes in that set that I think I posted for the material. So I'm going to use this one, at least for some of these, and then I may go back and grab the other one again, but for some reason that one keeps spreading out. It's bothering me. Just as I say how awesome a brush it is, brushes do go bad after you've used them for a while. And again, you can recondition or start with a new one. Okay, so maybe I'll cross this one over here. That one worked much better. And let's see, there's a break in here somewhere where, like, there's a set of them that come here, and then there's a set that starts here, squiggles. And then kind of comes back. So it's like a little opening. Okay. But I'm not trying to get them exactly the same. Oops, somehow I got blue on my brush. There we go. Need to add more water. All right. Some of these are going to be a little thinner than the others. You'll see once in a while, you'll have one that kind of curls. Maybe comes back out. Have some fun with this. When I go towards the middle, there's a bunch of these. Maybe this one curls here. Now, a lot of them are kind of stopping short. There's even like a little tangled set right here. So if you want to create that, feel free. And some will be in front of others. Now, there is a set. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go over these that I did the first time. Some of these are short. So, for example, this one here that we did earlier. And then there seems to be another one that just kind of curls up. And then I'm going over this line. I'm going to go over this line, and then it looks like it curls up in here. There's a bunch of tangled ones on this side too. And some short ones. No, I don't worry about putting any white down in here because I'm hoping that when I go to put the color in, that these kind of look a little more translucent. So we'll not worry about making these very white. These are the ones that I'm going to want you to come back even after you've done one coat, because I told you to work kind of watery, and maybe come back and just add another little bit of white over it, because we want those colors at the top to be very bright. So these are the ones that we want really white. The rest will let fade. Everybody doing good? Doing well? happy, relaxed. I have some other classes coming up. I was a little late in setting them up this time. I usually have them up by the Friday before the week, but I didn't this time. Got kind of had a fairly decent weekend and worked in the yard some and just kind of got sidetracked. Even Friday I did a little bit, so I didn't post them. But on Friday, I'm going to do a children, I should say children, a youth class, but it is for adults as well if you want to join. It's kind of just a fun craft. We are going to work a little bit with watercolor paint. We're going to use pods, so if you want to kind of see how that process works, you can do yours entirely as a painting. For the youth, I'm going to recommend that they cut out some pictures of underwater life. So we're celebrating underwater this week. And so maybe turtles or fish. And then we're going to create some of the underwater seaweed, and maybe it will look like a reef. Some underwater plants. We'll have maybe a little school of fish that we'll paint. Right, I have quite a bit now. Maybe a couple more. Let me do some of these tangles inside here that are kind of fun. So maybe I bring this down and I kind of cross back and forth. And then one of these, maybe I have one in front. I'm going to go back over with the white. And I bring it back over here. Again, going to go over this one with white. And this one. And then maybe create a little tangled mess with crossover. I'm really not following the photograph that much. Which is probably a good thing. Kind of make it your own. And you don't have to worry about copyright issues. This is just a guide. Now, I did say not to go ahead and put that dark blue in here, but I'm going to suggest you go ahead and lighten it up a little. Maybe do a little bit of light blue, kind of like what was in here, because this area is going to end up being more white. It kind of looks like it has little sections here that maybe break off that are kind of fuzzy. Just makes me think of a cloud. Okay. All right, and the end of it is going to be quite uneven. You just don't see it very well, so we'll you can take some of your white paint. You go between some of this. Bring that down a little lower, just uneven. All right. Now, the challenge is going to be that when you go and put your color in there, you're going to have to figure out where some of these are. You still don't see them really well. I put the light blue in there hoping that you'd be able to see it better, but I think I'm going a little too light with my white paint. So keep that in mind. Maybe you work from the middle here and then you come up with your color, and that way you don't completely lose the lines that you just did. All right. But I wanted to make sure that these colors were really bright. So I'm still coming back and I'm adding a little white to them. That's probably good. Okay. Now, if you want to add more of these at the bottom, you can feel free. Some of them are coming from behind. You don't see them as well. So maybe you kind of start here and you add some thin lines and maybe even cross those over here and there. I know there seems to be one here. And then some that kind of cross over here. Not to make that too white. But I feel like I could use a few more. So there are some that are kind of faint. So when you do those, since you're on that darker color, maybe work with a little less paint and a little bit more water. Nice and thin. So you hardly see the paint on the brush. And then just go in and put those that are in the background. Okay, so hopefully you have enough now, and we can go ahead and start adding some color to this dude. Put some white paint in here. All right, I think I'm good. Maybe add a couple of these. All right, that's good enough. Okay, so we're gonna start out at the top and we're gonna go ahead and work with that teal color. So if you have a teal, or like I said, an aqua green or something, you're gonna go ahead and put a little bit on your plate. So it's kind of like this color here. You can see it, I don't know how well the light is. I have a bigger container that, this one says aqua green. This says a cobalt teal, so they're a little different. This one I hope has a little bit more blue in it than the other one does, but either way, it should be fine. And then what I want you to do is take your dark blue that you used at the bottom. If you still have some on your plate, great. If not, give yourself just a tiny bit, not a lot. I'm going to use my big round brush, and I'm going to take some of this dark blue. I'm going to water it down though, so that it's not too thick. So you'll see it looks more like there's just a watery blue, not the whole full paint on there. And if you look at this photograph, you have to enlarge it to really see it. You're gonna see there's some shadows. So for example, here, there's like a little shadow that goes from here to here, and then up, and then out, and then almost like a little triangle there. And then there's some color up in here. So what I want to do is kind of blend some of that color in already. So when we put the other color on it, you'll see that. So I'm filling that in. So I don't want it to be too dark, so I'm going to thin it out a little bit. A little bit here, a little bit here. Again, this little section here. And then this section here goes a little dark, a little longer. Okay, so we're kind of creating a shadow there. But we're doing the shadow early on. Nice and thin, not too dark. Then the rest of that, the blue that you used in here, whatever that light blue was, I want you to, if you don't have any, make some up really quick. Lighter is better. And I'm going to put a little bit in those other areas. See, jellyfish are fairly translucent. So when we put this teal color over, we're even going to put some teal in the water. And then I'm going to clean up this edge a little because it was kind of messy. You can leave a little bit of a white edge if you want though. But like a puzzle, just fill all that in. Maybe leave a teeny tiny bit of that white edge. We're going to let that dry a little. And then that same light blue, I want you to throw some, actually more of the medium, so you might want to darken a little bit. And I want you to put a little bit in here, kind of like a little triangle. And probably in here, although it looks like I needed a couple more tendrils in that space, which I can add later. So everything should have some blues in it. Even in here, you put a little bit of the darkness on either side here to kind of emphasize where these little tendrils are. Don't have the white behind it. And that should do it, I think. We're going to let that top part dry a little. And if you have the translucent or that glazing medium, you can add a little bit of glazing medium to the teal that we're using. If you don't have it, don't worry. You're just going to water it down just a little. So I added a little bit of that medium. You can kind of see, I just kind of poured it in there. And now I'm going to mix it with that green, kind of turquoise green. I'm going to add a little bit of white to the whole thing to kind of lighten it up some. Probably a little bit more medium now that I added white, because I'm going to need that in order to keep it thin. And if you don't have the medium, you're just going to water it down quite a bit. So you basically want to work with a very wet area of that color. So very wet, more water than paint, or more medium than paint. And I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to throw some of that color in there. And I'm going to go over both colors. So check your color, make sure this is dry. I'm working thin, but if you're working thick, it's going to blend, and we do not want to blend, okay? So if you're working thick, just wait it out. So what I'm doing is I'm going right over that line, and I'm going all the way to the edge with this teal. And this will be my first layer. I'm going to do a second layer. Okay, and I'm going to bring this color in here even, right over the blue. So check your paint, make sure it's dry. If not, wait just a couple minutes, and then you can do it. Go all along the edge. And you can kind of see through it because you either used a very thin, watery paint, or you used that glaze, and the glaze made it more transparent. So that's the goal, to keep it transparent. You can still see color, but it's not real bold. Okay, we'll come out here, all the way to the edge. And all this is going to get that glaze, every bit of it. Including the outside here. Right now you can sort of see the lines still. These colors in here, you can kind of see it. But when we add a little bit of that glaze, it won't be as bold. Once you get some in there, I'm just making sure I have a fair amount. I'm going to leave it alone. Make sure I don't miss any areas. I'm going to go all the way here to this tendril, sort of, kind of. Go over the tendril. And then this side. And then I'm going to leave it alone. Make sure I go all the way around. And leave it alone. Now we're not going to put that white haze in there yet, and we're not going to put the white background in just yet. We're going to start working on the tendrils. So if you want to pick out your colors that you're going to use, what I see in the photograph is I see some pinks, I see kind of, well, magenta, I see a very bright purple, so I'm going to use what I call Barney purple, which is the fluorescent violet, and I'm going to use that over the magenta in some cases to make it look more fluorescent. So I'm going to put some of that on my plate. I'm going to use my fluorescent yellow orange for the area that I'm going to be putting in the background that's yellow. So if you look at the photograph and you see the yellow, I'm going to use the fluorescent orange and I'm going to use some yellow. So if you don't have fluorescent orange, just grab your yellow and put that on your plate. And then I have additionally some red violet, which is not fluorescent, which is a deep red violet here. Squeeze it, I've used this quite a bit. I love this color. It's a deep purple, but it's got a little bit of a red tone to it. So I'm going to put some of that on my plate. If I can make room, let's make room for it. And what else do we see? I see a little burnt orange. So I don't know if I mentioned that at the beginning. If you have an orange or you don't have an orange, you can take a little bit of red, you can take a little bit of burnt sienna and mix it with a little yellow to kind of get maybe that orange, but more of a burnt orange look. I'm going to put some magenta on my plate. So I have a lot of colors that I'm going to be using, and you'll see as I use them. And then you can be creative if you don't have the exact colors. Where's my burnt orange now? As I say it, I have to find it. All right. And then there is some pink in there, which again you can just use if you don't have like a light pink. I mean, your best bet is just to take some white and have it available to mix some of these colors a little lighter, so you can make that purple a little lighter in some areas. And what else do I see? So some of the tendrils, when they hit the water, they look blue. So they may not actually be blue, but they look blue. So this is where I thought using the ultramarine blue would be a good call. So I'm going to put a little bit of that on my plate. And then if you don't have that and you just want to use that dark blue, you can lighten it with a little bit of white. But they're gonna, like I said, some of those tendrils look blue, and some of them still have a little white as they get down to the bottom, but a lot of them are just kind of, they just hit the light a little. But a lot of them are the same color from above, but maybe not as bold. All right, so you're gonna need that same small brush that you were using before, which is either a liner or a small, just a small bristle brush. Okay, so I'm using this liner again. And I'm gonna start filling in some of those colors, okay? So we're gonna come back to this. We're gonna add that little white haze. We're gonna put more of the teal in there and some a little bit of white to brighten it up. And then some of that's gonna come down in here as well. And then we'll touch up any of the tendrils. We'll put in some of the background here behind the, or in between, and then we'll be done. So we've got about 40 minutes to work. And so I'm gonna kind of let you watch me, but as I'm doing it, I'll continue to talk a little, but there'll be times, there'll be a little bit of a lull of silence because I am not very funny, so I don't have any jokes to tell you. And I don't have I don't have any good stories this week. I haven't had anything really out of the ordinary happen. It's been a pretty mild week so far. The weather's been getting better, thankfully. Okay, I'm gonna start with my pink, with my magenta. So I'm gonna take a little bit of magenta, add a little bit of white to it. So it's gonna look, actually you can kind of see my crazy plate here that has all these different colors on it. So this color right here, it looks like a red, but when you add white to it, it becomes very pink. And so I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna just start doing some lines. The lines this time need to go down a little further. And as it gets lower, you'll see it's gonna look automatically a little darker because it's on that dark background. So some of them will be darker, and then we'll intentionally make some of the lower parts lighter. Okay, now the key is don't worry about the lines you already did. If you want to start a new line, feel free. But try to keep consistent with the width of the lines if you can. Some of them will be a little wider just because. And don't forget, some of these are also short. So I'm gonna do a few over here in this color, and then I'm gonna change colors. And I'll make this one short. Let's see, up in here. So if you're painting along and you're not sure if you have enough, I wouldn't necessarily recommend you count the ones in the photograph, but kind of do a ballpark figure and you'll know. And remember, if you can't see the lines that you created, you can make up some new ones, or you can start about halfway down and go up instead of down. So for example, if I say, I can't really see this line very well, I'll start here, because I know there's one there, right? And then I'll come up, and then it's easier, much easier to see where it's supposed to be. And then you can come back and finish it off. So I'm doing these on Facebook Live. I think I said that before. And because I have some friends that will watch or they'll participate. And so I want to be sure that, you know, and I kind of like painting. I'm talking to myself, but at the same time, I know some of you are listening. So if you have any comments, you want to say anything, you want to tell me a joke, feel free. Don't want to keep you from painting though. And if you're watching this later on YouTube, as I said before, these are all free videos, so there'll be quite a few more coming. At some point I will change over to a platform where I may be charging a small fee for you to watch. And I hope you'll still support me. And you know, if you've had fun, you know, tell your friends. I'll be doing some in-person classes as well for those of you in Virginia. I'm in Ocean View by the Bay, and I also teach private classes. I have taught homeschool classes for many years. I did a lot of small groups. So, for example, I'd have a group of 3 or 5, you know, 3 to 5 students that were homeschooled that would form a class, and I would come out and teach. And I can still do that. There's a lot of pinks and reds in here. So some of these, even though right now they're really, really dark, some of these I'm going to end up adding like another layer maybe of a lighter pink. But I'm just filling a lot with this red because, or this magenta, dark magenta, because there's a lot of that. And a lot of these lines just are right next to each other, which is kind of difficult to do without blending them together. So that's why I said I'll come back later and make some of them pink, more pink. Like there's a cluster here of a bunch of them. So you can kind of see there are going to be multiple lines. So there's 1, and then there's 2. And then you don't really see where the lines go, kind of blend together or go right behind it. But there are a lot of clusters of the pink. I may switch to purple now. I'm grabbing this dark reddish red violet, which when I paint with it, you'll see actually looks more like a real purple, but it is called red violet. Very bold. And I will end up lightening up some of that. So you're gonna see, for example, here that I did a few, but there's another that's coming up from up here. And then it's crossing over and in between. So I'm still going to be making some of these up as I go along. Just if you see one specifically that catches your eye. This one here comes from back here and curls around. And then there's a couple here. And this will be very dark. You will see it as well. And then there's another, like some, they come down here. There's like 2 or 3. Maybe I'll go with a light purple at some point. And on this side, there's some purple, so I'm gonna go ahead and do some of those. in the middle, it looks like is where my my burnt orange ones look. So I'm going to add those. Right now I'm just kind of searching for the purple. There's like some lines that you can't really see the top. They come from behind and then they come down. So we got to put color in each of these. And some of these have, you'll see in the photograph, there are some lines that look like they're just white. Really translucent down there, that's perfect. All right, so in the middle, I have some of that burnt orange. So I'm gonna go ahead and take, where's that color right here? And you can make that again by using a little burnt sienna and a little bit of bright yellow. So some of these little squigglies. Now I didn't do all the ones that were up in here. I can come back and I can add them. There was like, kind of like look a little tangled set that just kind of ended up. It looked like there were some lines that went out, but they're like in the background, so I didn't want to cover my white with it. And then they lead to others that are down here. So there was a few tangles back here. I started the lines. I'm going to come in and fill them. And let's see. Maybe I'll put a line coming from back from here. Connecting to that. And then maybe over here. So see, I'm still making some up as I go. There's a bunch of them that are short here. So I'm going to add some lines, and they're kind of in the dark, so I don't have to worry if I make them exactly the way they are in the photograph. All right. Still see some more I can do. Still see some more. Have you ever painted and just talked to yourself? So it kind of feels like when I'm doing these. Okay. All right. I don't want to forget. I mean, there's other colors I can add in there, but I want to make sure I get some of this turquoise color. So I'm going to use that same teal turquoise that I used before, and I'm going to do these outside tendrils that you can kind of see out here. So I'm going to go ahead and do those in this color. Now I still have this mixed in with the glazing medium, which is making it very light. I'm going a little thicker because I could probably make those lines a little thinner, but I'm not real worried about it. And there's some section in here that almost looks fluorescent that we might add a little white. There's a lot of brightness in this. And I'm going to put a little bit out here. This could actually be covered too. I kind of forgot this section. And there's like a little squiggly area right here too. That you can see how you can hardly see it because I have that translucent color. And if you watered yours down, you're going to have the same problem. So if you want to grab some of that color that doesn't have, or that's thicker like I have right here, you can do that. So they're not always real translucent. this up. I'm going to put a little bit over here. Just kind of look at the edge. So there's some color in here. And then if you look down below, sometimes you'll see a little bit of that color. There's a little behind here. Maybe I might just make that up a little bit, put one down just to be more consistent. But some of these might, add a line here. I'm just adding these in. Didn't already have them. A lot of tangles going on in here. And take some a little artistic liberty and maybe, because this one kind of came in here, but it's just kind of boring. So maybe I'll flare it out here. Add a little more movement to this guy. Maybe add another one here. And maybe on the other side. Okay. Feel free to add any extras you want. So in the middle here, I still had some pink. So I had made those dark pink. Now I'm going to take a little bit of some white and mix it in with that magenta, but extra white. So if you have a light pink, you can use that. And then anywhere you see maybe that lighter color. So again, there were several sections in here. So I'm going to create some new ones. These can go easily over the ones you've created because the white mixed in with the magenta will be more opaque. And so it's a perfect opportunity to create some new lines and maybe even go over some of the ones you already have. Put some in behind these where you only see a little bit of it. Maybe bring one around and over. Over here, same thing. You'll see some of it. There was this one little section that was kind of open, so I'm trying not to put too much in there. And then there are lines of these. Still having fun, I hope. Don't forget to bring some of that pink down below. Kind of let it fade. Ooh, I have a friend from Costa Rica watching, at least briefly. If you're still there, Aldo, it's good to see your name pop up. Been a long time. He was our host when we went down on vacation a few years back. We got to talk to him a little bit. He speaks primarily Spanish, so si está ahí, Aldo. Buenos días. Buenos días. Buenos días a ti. Okay, I have kind of a almost peachish pink color towards the middle, and I have not used my fluorescent, so what I'm going to do is add a little bit of that bright yellow orange to my pink so that I can put this one in here, and it makes a nice orange, and then maybe throw a little bit of that in there. And then I'm just gonna do a couple of these. I don't know if they're gonna show up really well because I'm running out of white ones. But you'll see when I put it over there how bright it is. That one cross over. Same thing. Let it fade. And then maybe up in here. We're going to use this in the background here in just a moment. So if you've got your yellow, right up in here, right in this section in between, I want you to take some of your yellow and just kind of fill in those sections. So you're going to need your small brush to do it. Small brush to do it. And I see Gunter. I feel like I'm on Romper Room again. Hello, Gunter, if you hear me, if you're watching. I saw Laurie chimed in again. I know Laura's taking the session. Who else did I see? I've seen names pop up. I can't see my screen at all times because of where I'm sitting. I see Mary Kay was watching, at least briefly. A little bit of that yellow on this side. And then I want you to do the same thing over here, in between, just in this little section right here that's very light. I want you to put some of this color in between. Put yellow or this yellow orange if you have something like that. Just to create that brightness. And I may throw this color over here, just take a little artistic liberty. That's what I do. I'm not much of a realist when it comes to painting. I love color, so I tend to work with a lot of bright tones and such. Put a little bit of that color up in here. Anywhere you see a little yellow, just throw it in there in the background. There's a tiny bit over on this side, and you can just kind of smudge it in because we're going to still be putting some white. I put a lot of stuff in here, so I covered some of that, and probably more than I needed to. Okay? All right. And some of these do look white, so I'm leaving them light for now. I will be touching them up with a little bit of white. We have about 15 minutes, so I'm gonna walk you through how to brighten up this top part and add this little white fuzzy glaze here. So we're gonna switch brushes, and if you wanna use your big or your small or medium round, this one has a point for me, so I'm using this one. And let's see, can you see it here in the screen? Okay, so I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna take bright white, just bright white, and I'm gonna fill in, I'm gonna smudge it a little bit with that yellow, and I'm gonna get in just some of those little center sections. I'm gonna put the bright white. And I would even suggest that after we're done, you let this white dry and you come back and put even a little bit more of that white in there, okay? So this whole section in here, you can cover up some of the yellow, and you don't want to see, you want to see white in between. Because we're doing that, then you're going to want to come back and highlight some of these tendrils. So, because when I put white, I'm going to cover up some of those, that's fine. If I had put white all back here, then we would have had to use the colors to do the lines, and we could have, but some of you have been painted before. I try to be very aware and careful with that, and try to make it a little easier by not forcing you to draw with color. And sometimes it's just easier to just do it in white and then come back and do it again. A little extra step, but it saves you if you're not an experienced artist. Okay. So, but some people might have painted before, and they're going, well, I wonder why we're doing it this way. Why didn't we just do it in the background? Because then you wouldn't be able to see your lines. Maybe your lines would be too thick. And I want you to see and practice, and that way you'll be more successful. So I'm putting some white in between. Some of these sections are like, this little area was kind of a wavy little area. And in here, there's a little bit of white as well. And let's see, we did this already. And if you want, every now and then you can highlight one of your lines, maybe a line that you have already left white. Oops, somehow I got pink on my brush. Getting my brush again. So I'm intentionally highlighting some of these, which is what I said you could come back and do on the purple. All right, so you're going to want to come back and put a little bit more white in there so that you have the bright white just in those sections. And now we're going to go up top. I'm going to scroll this down, and I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm going to be working with a very watery white, and the other option too is using that glaze. And I'm going to come up top here. Okay, and I want it to be very watery, so you can see my white right now, but I'm going to add a little water to it and just kind of spread that out, and I'm going to give it a nice edge. And then I'm going to spread some of that color out. Now at the same time that I'm painting that with that white watery edge, and I'm spreading some of that out. Okay, I'm going to start with this side. Then I want you to take some of that teal, either again very watery or with that glazing medium, and I want you to come back over it one more time, over all those areas. So I'm going back over. So you'll be able to see some of that blue that you originally painted, but not as much. And then you're going to blend it in with that white edge a tiny bit. So if you want to lighten it up some more, grab some of that watery white again. Spread it out. Clean your brush if you get too much, because right now I have too much on there, and I'm just going to smudge it just to highlight the edge. And the other area that you're going to want to do that with is where you saw in here this little edge that we drew with our pencil. I want to edge that. And then I want to take some of that teal again, and I want to put a little bit in here. A little bit in here. So you can just see the edge a little. And you can cover up again with that very watery color. and then the very watery white. Going along the edge. But once I get there, I'm going to come back, take some of that green, and blend it in there. Because I don't want you to have a slightly solid white edge. I want that white to kind of blend in a little. And you can't blend two colors unless both are wet. And then you can kind of highlight in here. You'll see there's some highlighted areas where we just did this. Look at your photo. Put some of that green on the outside. And because we want this to look translucent, we want it to be that you can kind of see through it a little bit. I want you to take that glazed color or that very watery teal. I'm grabbing a lot of water right now. I'm not even grabbing my medium now. I'm using just water. And I'm going to put some of that color out here. Just in this corner. I'm spreading it out. Now, I'm using this brush because this is very watery thin. If you use a lot of paint on the end of your brush, you're going to need to wet it to be able to spread it around. Okay? I want to give it that tone up in this corner so that this jellyfish looks like you're seeing through it to some of that color. Okay, it's still kind of blue, but it has some of that teal in it. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Don't lose your edge completely. And add some of that color. Remember I said we were going to add it in the beginning, and I thought, no, I want you to see the process to create that translucency. And so this is how you do it. You want that color that was in the background showing through in here. And then you can take more white if you want. And just here and there, give yourself a little more of an edge. Again, very, very watery, or you spread it out. And spread it out. And then the last thing I want to show you, because we're going to put some more white in there. You're going to do that later. You're going to touch up some of your tendrils, and you're going to want to make some of those pink ones look maybe a little brighter in sections. Look at your photo, and then they get a little darker. So maybe up here, add a little bit of a lighter pink, even lighter than you used before. Maybe it has a little bit of a purple tone. Okay, highlight some of those. And then we have this film. Well, I probably shouldn't have done that just now because I'm about to show you this film. Okay, so in here it should be dry. So I shouldn't have done that, but anyway, we're good. I just got rid of it. Okay, all in here, I want to create another glaze. And so I'm going to use my big round brush. And I'm going to clean it really well, because there's still some blue on it. In fact, I'm having trouble keeping my paper towel clean today. I'm going to clean my brush really, really, really well. Really, really well. And then I'm going to add either a lot of water to that white, or I'm gonna add the glazing medium. And it's like you're creating a cloud in here. So you're not gonna go all the way up, but you're gonna kind of smudge it in. So now I don't want you to brush it in. I want you to kind of pat it in. Does that make sense? Like, just to create a little bit of a cloud. Hey, Dawn, how are you? I see Dawn's on. Okay, and so you're gonna be able to see through a little bit of that, right? Right in here, where, but you wanna cover most of it. So, very light along the edges. And you're gonna come down probably what, like a couple of inches maybe, and you're gonna come out here as well, and you're gonna come out here as well. And then you're gonna kind of smudge that in. Just lightly touching the canvas. Lightly touching it, right? There are areas in the middle that are gonna be very white, and then the rest you want it to look translucent. So you can grab some of your white paint, and maybe right here in the middle, you know, you're gonna touch up these areas. And then the rest of this, you're gonna see, you'll be able to see, when it dries, you'll be able to see through it. Now, it's kind of fuzzy at the end, so if you clean your brush and you dry your brush, and get the paint all off of it, and then you come back, you can kind of smudge those edges. And kind of flatten down some of the color you used. Okay. So again, this can be a little smoother, so you can see through it. I'm coming back and I'm just creating a little smoothness to it. It actually goes down a little lower here. And then up there, you want to cover up some of those areas with extra white paint. I'm afraid I've tainted my paint with a little blue, so I'm having a little trouble. Sorry about that. So that area, some of those areas you're going to leave like a solid, almost like a solid white. And then you clean your brush and smudge those edges a little so that you don't look like you have a line there. Okay, same thing up here. Smudge it. You can even use your finger. I tend to be a finger painter, so I'm smudging it a little on the edge so it doesn't look like I painted a line. Smudge, smudge, smudge. And then you look through, and any colors that you need to touch up in the middle. So here I see a little yellow right underneath there. Okay, I'm gonna come back with my yellow. I'm gonna actually take it right up to the edge of that. And then otherwise white. I'm gonna find my white. I have a section here that's really more white than yellow. Out there, out here, and little lines. And then up top, again, if you want to brighten it up a little bit with a little white. And bring in your teal. You want these to be subtle. And bring a little teal out here. Oops. Grabbed white. Until you like it, right? Until you have what you want. Okay, so we're going to be wrapping up, but what I'm going to tell you is I am going to work on this a little bit longer. I would suggest you do the same. Take a good look at that photograph. Take a good look at the photograph. Look at the colors. Maybe out here, again, I didn't do that part, but you might want to add a few tendrils that are that ultramarine blue. Maybe in here, you want to add a little bit more yellow. Maybe you add a couple more tendrils if you don't have enough. If you want to add more of the turquoise in these little sections here that come out so that you can see it better, usually adding a little bit of white will pop it a little bit more. Okay, same thing on this side. I don't think, no, just like a little teeny section here that's similar. Okay, you're going to want to highlight some of your tendrils. And if you want to make this brighter in areas, you can use that teal, you can use a little bit of blue and brighten up those sections. If you feel like, oh, I kind of lost my shadows, you know, you can take a little bit of blue, put it in there. And even while the blue is wet, you can take the teal and blend it with it. Okay, so if you say, okay, well, I got all my lights in, but I lost kind of my darks. And you can come back in with that blue and create it. Again, to blend, you have to have two wet paints together. So I used some of the blue right here while it's wet, and I blended in with the green, okay? So there are some sections that you might want to do that, like maybe you lost some of your darkness here for the shadow. You can take some of your teal and mix it in and bring it right back, okay? So practice on that, practice with a little bit on that. And if you finish your painting and want to share it with me, again, send it to me on email, tutoringart@gmail. Post it on my event page on facebook.com/tutoringart, on the event or on the page. And also you can message or tag me on Instagram, Tutoring Art. Thank you so very much for being part of this again today. And I hope you'll join me for other sessions. If you have any questions, if there's something you didn't understand, feel free to contact me. I'd be glad to get to know you and help. All right, take care, folks, and have a wonderful rest of the day.